You're listening to the Kilcullen Diary Podcasts, stories in sound from a village grown bigger. Hello, I'm Brian Byrne. When I heard of the death of former RTE journalist and editor Mike Burns over the weekend, it brought back memories. In fact, I'd only been thinking of him recently and wondering how he was. Now I know, at the age of 84, he has doorstepped his way into that great newsroom in the sky. I first met Mike in 1977 when he was a guest contributor at a communications course I was taking in the Catholic Communications Centre in Dublin. I still recall his good humour and his engaging way in telling stories about journalism, both in print and radio, which was the best way to get his message across to us doing that course. He was, at the time, head of news radio in RTE after many years as one of the station's journalists in that medium and on TV. His status rested lightly. He was never a man to make himself important. Roll on to the following year, and I was by then working for the Communications Centre as a journalist and assistant producer with its Veritas Tapes division. I was also directing the journalism module of the communications course. Mike and a number of others, including Tom Savage, Terry Prone and Emer O'Kelly, were all still guest contributors to the course, and I had gotten to know them well, both as friends and as colleagues. Emer and Tom were both presenters of It Says in the Papers, although she was then moving into TV news. In 1980, now working with the Sunday Journal newspaper, which was to cease publication a couple of years later, I still directed the journalism module for the centre. During a coffee break, chatting with Emer and Tom, Emer mentioned that a recent recruit to the It Says in the Papers panel, Ted Bonner, wasn't going to stay. Apparently, he didn't like the early mornings. "Does that mean there's a vacancy?" I asked Tom. "Yep, probably," he answered. "If you want to go for it, see Mike Burns." Well, that wasn't going to be too hard. As soon as work finished that afternoon, a Thursday, I stopped by the RTE newsroom, having phoned earlier to see if Mike would be there. He came out of his office in his usual genial good humour. I said I'd heard Ted wasn't sticking with the gig and that I'd be interested. "OK," he said after a couple of moments, and he brought me down to a shelf at the end of the newsroom where there was a big stack of Ireland's provincial papers. "Take those home and come back in a week's time with a script," he said. "We'll try you for a provincial parade." That was a Saturday afternoon 15-minute roundup of the regional papers. I took the papers home, but waiting a week wasn't my style. The next morning I was back outside his office door with the papers and a script when Mike arrived for work. He looked at me and grinned. "OK, come on down to the studio and we'll record it, see how you sound." I did, and then went on to my day's work at the Communications Centre. On the following Monday I got a call from Mike's PA to say I was on the provincial parade panel if I wanted it, and that was the start of my broadcasting. It was only a month or so later that I was asked to take over the It Says in the Papers slot for Tom Savage while he headed off to Florida on his annual holidays. When he came back, they didn't drop me, and for the next several years the gig rotated a week at a time between myself, Tom, and legendary RTE broadcaster P.P. O'Reilly, then retired. We all three had a different style, and it worked well. I held on to the slot even after I joined the station as a full-time freelance casual sub in the autumn of 1982. There I was responsible for writing radio news by day, and in every third week I'd also be in at 5 a.m. to do my stint at It Says in the Papers. It was a freelance job, so technically I could still do it. That ended when I was asked by Mike Burns to apply for one of 3 full-time positions in the new Radio 2 News service. I did so, and reached the point of interview for the job. That was conducted by Mike, the news administration manager, and Wesley Boyd, head of news television in RTE. All 3 of them knew me very well. I remember spending a lot of time on my presentation for that interview. When I finally went into the room and sat down, Mike gave his usual big smile and welcome to me. Then he looked at the others. We all have to stay here for at least 15 minutes, he mused. What are we going to talk about? My pitch for the job was never made. The chat was light and unrememberable. I got the job, and I spent several years with Radio 2 News, becoming deputy head of the service before I left the station to do other things. I spent most of the 1980s as a radio journalist with RTE, a time that I absolutely enjoyed. Thanks to a man who is being remembered by very many with great affection at this time. His professionalism as a journalist and his work behind the scenes in improving British-Irish relations is also remembered. Thanks, Mike, for enabling some of the best of my years in a Second Life career that remains still as fascinating and rewarding to me as it was then. I'm Brian Byrne. This is Kilcullen Diary. Thanks for listening.